there 3 men came from the west, their fortunes for to try. And the 3 men made a solemn vow that John Barleycorn should die. Fal-de-dal-de-diddly, fal-de-dal-de-diddly gamore.
Hail and welcome to this beautiful field of barley here in South Devon, in the ancient kingdom of Dumnonia, where the Celtic Dumnoni tribe once lived, loved, fished and farmed. I'm River Oak, I'm a Druid of these parts. Well, if you've been travelling with us on our journey, you'll be well versed in what the Pagan Wheel of the Year is by now. But if you've only just jumped on board, well, here's a short film that explains what we're all about.
So, just to recap before we start, a lightning tour of the Wheel of the Year. This is a cycle of 8 celebrations that each around 6 weeks apart, and it melds together the 4 major solar events of the year, that's the solstices and the equinoxes, with 4 ancient agricultural celebrations, each of which mark a really key time in the old North European farming calendar. And we kick off in the 12 o'clock position at Yule. Yule is the winter solstice. It's the longest night and the shortest day of the year. By Imbolc, it's still kind of chilly, but we're seeing the first signs of spring, maybe the occasional snowdrop. In the 3 o'clock position, the spring equinox, when night and day are in equipoise. That is Ostara. It's also called Albanila in the Druid tradition. And now we're really beginning to get a feel for spring, aren't we? And there's wonderful things are happening, particularly hares laying eggs. If you want to find out more about that, you'll have to keep watching. Next up comes Beltane. Oh, blissful Beltane, a time of bonfires and bonking, when we're going to embrace each other, and the F word, fertility. Well, whatever did you think I was going to say? And no, you can't just fast forward to Beltane. And after all that excitement, it's going to be time to lounge about and enjoy midsummer, the longest day, the shortest night, with lovely, balmy, sunny days beside the seaside. Ice cream, anyone? But before long, we'll have to get up and do some work, because it will be Lughnasadh, the first harvest, the harvest of corn, barley and wheat. Next we've reached the autumn equinox, a time again of equipoise between day and night, when we start to enter the dark half of the year. This is Mabon, or if you're a Druid, you're going to know it as Albanelfed. It's the second harvest, the time when we bring in the fruit and the nuts. Next up, it's Samhain, that magical time of the year when the veil between this life and the other world is very thin, so thin that we can communicate with the dead. In fact, they may well just come a-walking around. Spooky! And then we're back where we started. We are back at midwinter, the winter solstice. It's Yule again.
Yes, this is Lughnasadh. So let's start by asking what's in a name, particularly a tricky-dicky swine-to-spell name like this one. Well, essentially it means the gathering of Lu. Simples. But who exactly was this geezer, and why the great get-together? Well, it transpires that Lu was no ordinary sort of bloke, not least because he was a god, and not just any old god. No. Lu was the god of all human skills, which when you think about it is a rather big brief. And in particular, it was he who learned the skills of ploughing, sowing and reaping that allowed humankind to transition from roaming hunter-gatherer to settled farmer. Ooh, big love for that, Lu. Known as Llu in Wales and worshipped across the whole Celtic world, Lu's name means bright, and he was an Irish sun god, yes, a solar god, a fierce warrior who helped establish the divine reign of the Druid of Dumnonia.
The who?
No, not the who, the Druid of Dumnonia, the folk of the goddess Danu, a supernatural race of kings, queens, druids, healers, bards, warriors and craftsmen who dwelt in the other world but interacted with us lot in the human world, and were often associated with the Sidhe, those mysterious fairy folk, and who were said to have brought about a time of peace and prosperity to ancient Ireland. Okay, so that's Lou sorted. What about the Nasa bit? Well, Nasa means gathering or games. Now Lou's mother was the goddess Tautu, and she was one wonderful woman, so much so that she single-handedly cleared the plains of Ireland so the people could grow crops. Now this was a big ask, and sadly rather too big, for exhausted from her endeavours, poor Tautu promptly keeled over and died. But not before she promised her son Lou that for eternity there would be corn and milk in every home, just as long as he held a great games gathering in her memory every August. So that's just what he did, and these were big boy games, a time when Parg the pagan could preen, prance and prove both power and prowess to Nancy, the nice girl next door. Now, remember the festival Imbolc on February the 1st, that most feminine celebration of milk and motherhood? Well, Lughnasadh lies diametrically opposite in the Wheel of the Year and is also diametrically opposite in flavour, for this is a festival of masculinity, maxed up and with a generous topping of testosterone. The games took place in Talthian, County Meath, and is claimed can be traced back almost 4,000 years. That's a long, long time. And these continued to be held intermittently in some form until 1932. Traditionally, each games opened with a pageant depicting the story of Lou, which was then followed by a feast of bilberries and corn cake, and culminated on the eve of Lughnasadh. That's August the 1st. These gatherings and games, well, they lasted for weeks, during which there was running and wrestling, long jumping and lobbing, hurling and horse racing, sword fighting and archery, which, okay, I admit doesn't alliterate, but in fairness both do involve pointy sticks that you just wouldn't want to get in the way of. Yes, warriorhood was the name of the game, and these fighting men held a position of honour and respectability in Celtic society on account of their skill, their maturity, their good conduct, their wisdom and their eloquence. Ooh, did I say fighting men? Well, sorry lads, before your egos swell like ripening corn, I have to tell you that women were also warriors, and none more tall and terrifying than Boudica, Queen of the East Anglia Iceni tribe. Famed for her fierce eyes and flowing hair, Boudica led a major uprising against our Roman occupiers, notably in what would become Colchester and London, leaving approximately 75,000 dead in their wake. Although ultimately defeated, Boudica remains a powerful symbol of the struggle for justice and independence. So big love to Boudica as well!
Anyway, back to Lou and the great gathering of the tribes. Aside from the games, this was a time to celebrate the first harvest, that's the grain harvest, and traditionally the first cut of corn was presented to Lou in a solemn ceremony.
It was also a time to celebrate the ripening of human talents, a time to showcase the arts like poetry, storytelling, singing, together with crafts such as jewellery making and weaving. Additionally, it was an opportunity to engage in both political and legal debate, not least because Lou was also esteemed as a great judge. So disputes were settled, contracts sealed, and marriages made, typically in the form of handfastings, which could be annulled after a year and a day if things were not, well, too tickety-boo in the marital home. Goods, animals and gossip would also be traded, friendships forged, and the feasting and the fires continued well into the night. Fertility rites were right up there too, literally right up there, as a girl and a boy would be tossed high into the air together in the linked arms of their friends, whilst maidens would be wrapped in hay and only released on receipt of a kiss. In medieval times, the festivities expanded to include travelling fairs, fortune tellers, entertainers and morris dancing. These events were commonplace in most communities and were known as ales or hoppings. And they were a nice little earner for the churches too, with beer, wine and cider being consumed in copious quantities, both ritually and riotously. The first corn was made into a loaf of bread, which was then consecrated for the Anglo-Saxon Lammas, the loaf mass, from which the expression Lammas is derived, the other name for this festival and this season. So once again, we have a cheeky little fusion of pagan custom and Christian practice. And Lammas became a time when local elections were held, rents were paid, and a generally good time was had by all. All that is, except Queen Victoria, who was not amused, and decided that although children could be sent up chimneys and down mines, the idea of rural folk having a bit of a laugh at Lammas was way beyond the pale. So the fairs were forbidden. But Lughnasadh is not all about fun and games, for there is another side to this season, and a narrative as old as civilization itself. That of sacrifice, the need for death to facilitate rebirth, a suffering to be endured for the greater good. The greater good. Rejection before resurrection. Indeed, there are ancient tales of human sacrifice to ensure a good harvest, and even the king could find himself bound for the bonfire in times of famine. Ooh, ouch.
And of course we have Jesus at Calvary. But although JC is top of the pops, let's not forget JB, that's John Barleycorn, felt by many to be a personification of the ancient corn god, who represents a cycle of life, death and then rebirth.
For Sir John is a sown seed who sprouts, grows strong, matures, but then is cut down in his prime, bound, pierced, flailed, almost sounds biblical, doesn't it, before being ground to make bread or brewed into beer. But you know, he doesn't really die, as some of his seed lives on, and so life's cycle continues from generation to generation to generation. So Lughnasadh, Lammas, is a bittersweet time. It's a time to enjoy the generous fruits of the earth and of our own hard labour, and it's a time for communities to party and to just generally let their hair down. But it's also a time of sacrifice, as demonstrated by Teitu and poor John Barleycorn. It's a time to realise that these days of bounty will not last forever, and we must now start to store those things that we require to sustain us during the darker days that will surely come in the months ahead.
But for now, let's just let the ale flow. Indeed, if I had a jug of beer now, I'd be raising a toast to John Barleycorn. I'll be back again towards the end of September, Alban Elfed, the autumn equinox. But for now, I'll wish you a very happy and blessed remainder of the summer and bid you hail and farewell.
But Barleycorn, well, he did not die, shed you not a single tear. For little Sir John proved the strongest of men. He'll return again next year. Fal-de-dal-de-diddly, fal-de-dal-de-diddly, gamore.